great. So maybe some of you, I don't know if you knew about this methodology before or not, but the intuition behind this is Lean Startup, many people know about this through the book or because of the book, okay? But this is, of course, a lot more. So let's take a step back and let's first, in this general part, talk about how and why Lean Startup emerged, okay? Let me just go through how was the traditional way of creating a company. And I put here this comment, traditional in the sense of, first of all, it's inherited from management of established companies. Okay, so there was not a framework that could apply to startups. This was a really new phenomenon. So there were no management practice to apply to these cases. So the best thing we could do is, what is the traditional way of creating a company, or of actually, for that matter, managing a company? It could be a new division, a new business line, a new product, launching a new product, a new service, or anything. Okay. Well, what practice shows, what evidence shows, is that most of the time it starts with an idea. Okay, it starts with an idea which is not necessarily linked to what it's called in this jargon, a pain. Okay, so it's just someone thinks that, okay, why don't we launch this project, or why don't we create a new product for this, or why don't we change that? You know, why we don't create a company to do something? Okay. Then after some validation, some checks, the normal way is to then go on and develop a business plan. Okay, we put together one person, or it could be we put together a team, and then we develop a business plan with some assumptions about the market. We make some projections, some forecasts, and maybe, depending on the size of the company, a few months later, after spending a ton of time doing the business plan, then we decide to launch the project, to launch the idea. And then what? Then what happens? Well, the problem is that many times, most of the times, and I don't know if you know the statistics, but the most widespread accepted number is that about 90% of startups fail within 3 years of starting their business. So what is the problem? That applying this approach, it's taking a lot of resources from the startup. It's taking a lot of time. Actually, it doesn't take into consideration the reality of the startup, which is, okay, in an established company, you have some history, some financial history, you have accounting, you have your financial department, you have there was no data about Uber before Uber. There was no data about Airbnb before Airbnb. They created those businesses, right? But if you're in a big company, probably you have data about your own startup, your own company, or your sector at least. But a startup faces a lot of uncertainty. There is no data. There's like an obvious lack of data about your business, about the future. You do not have time, and also your resources are extremely limited. Okay, this is the concept I told you about earlier, the liability of newness. Is the same environment, the same problems that like an established company could face, and it doesn't happen anything, it's just a delay. For a startup, it could mean just disappearing, okay? And what is another problem with this? Okay, if we wait, let's say 6 months to launch the project, and we create a proper soft launch or a launch event, and we do a lot of PR, we let a lot of people know about the idea, about the project, and then it fails. And this has happened a lot. This has happened a lot. It's happened to Google, it's happened to Microsoft, it's happened to pretty much any big company. Well, it turns out that then you have a bigger problem, okay? So more or less to try to solve or to improve this is, okay, how do we come up with a framework that actually takes into account the reality of the startups, okay? Well, so in 2008, Eric Ries proposed this framework, this methodology, okay? The book was published 3 years later, but this started in 2008, almost 15 years ago, as I said earlier. What is important about this, because is a concept of paramount importance in the lean startup, is that Eric didn't just make a thought experiment, as it could be done in a more scientific academic setting, right? He was not just thinking about how to do this or just observing how other people were doing this. No, he had this pain, as we talked just in the previous slide. He didn't come up with an idea. He was having this pain. He's suffering. Some of his companies failed because of this, okay? So he put into this methodology his personal experience. He had a very deep knowledge of what this problem was and why these practices were failing, okay? Then at that time, there was a new wave of management approaches, which were the lean management. It came from manufacturing and from other areas of management. Then he started linking these practices with his personal experience, and then something about also customer development, how we have a customer-centric approach, okay? And originally he took these three concepts, these three areas, and tried to apply them to high-tech startups, okay? That was the original application of the lean startup. However, during the last 15 years, this has evolved to have a wider application at the moment, okay? Mostly it applies to software companies with high growth potential, but it can be applied to pretty much any project. It can be directed to final customers or to industrial customers, whatever, okay? What are some of the ideas behind the intuition of lean startup? Then, okay, we know how he came up with the idea, but what are some of the underlying ideas about this intuition? Okay, well, one of them, and this is not, I think it's not written like this literally, at least not in the book or in any of the talks you can hear him talking about the lean startup, is that ideas are pretty much worthless. And worthless is a word I chose, okay? So, as I said, it's not from him, okay? But, okay, every one of us can have a lot of ideas, pretty much on a daily basis. However, what it makes a difference, what really matters, and this comes from him as well, is the execution, okay? It's commonly said that it's better to have a good team executing a bad idea, because you can change the idea. We'll talk about this later, but than having a great idea with a poorly executed executing team, okay? Because then it's aimed to failure. Then the lean startup, another of the underlying concepts, it's just this balance between excessive planning, as we just mentioned earlier. It doesn't make sense for a startup to spend 6 months doing a business plan, but it's also not chaos, okay? It doesn't mean let's start doing things and wait what happens, wait and see. It's not that, okay? So he developed what it's called the build, measure, learn loop, all right? We'll have another slide later about this, but basically it's just an iterative process in which we build something, we measure the impact we have from the customers, in the customers, and then we try to extract some learnings from this, okay? We change completely the way we measure progress, okay? It's not something so tangible in terms of how many products we build, how many sales we have. It's more about how much we learned, okay? And then we continue with the loop. And we see when this process starts losing its efficiency, okay? As I said, more on this later. Something that it's, I think, extremely important for an audience like you guys today is, okay, this loop, it's normally called build, measure, learn, but it starts backwards, okay? He tried and he's a really smart guy. He tried to have a more scientific approach, but let's take this with caution, okay? Because we start the process with the learning part. So we define what we want to learn, what hypothesis we establish, as we would do in one of our research papers or anything. Then we measure what we're doing, and then we build about that, okay? But what's the problem? And that's why I highlighted this hypothesis. Keep in mind that hypotheses in lean startup are not poorly defined, but are not as rigorous as in a scientific setting, okay? This hypothesis basically could be pretty much, I don't know, anything from we think that people would benefit from having an app in their phone to call a taxi, to call a car instead of a taxi, okay? This is a hypothesis. And it doesn't need to have like an experiment or observational data with a specific sample size. No, it's more about intuition. Here is more about pragmatism, being practical, okay? You have a few customers repeating the same opinion. Basically, you take that as a possible generalization, and then you move on, okay? Because if you're wrong, it's okay. You're iterating so fast that the process will correct itself, okay? So you don't need to wait and have 300 people confirming your hypotheses or something like that, okay? Sorry about that. All right, and then this comes for the last of the general concepts, I think, okay? Which is not a concept in itself, is a set of concepts. It's what I call here the different fits. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but throughout the whole business creation process, at least in the startup environment, people use these terms. Founder idea fit. What does it mean? Okay, if you are working, if you want to develop an artificial intelligence system to improve efficiency of water usage in agriculture, that's a great idea. It's an amazing idea, okay? Do you have any background in artificial intelligence? Do you have any background in agriculture? Do any of your teammates have that background? So that is what we call the founder idea fit, all right? This is not really a deal breaker, but it's really important, okay? For everything, for the potential success of the company, for receiving investment, for receiving public support, okay? There has to be a nice founder idea fit. Then I will skip the product market because that's one of the most important. But okay, we also have a problem solution fit, what we call a problem solution fit. Okay, you've identified a problem. Like, all right, many companies suffer from cyber attacks. All right, then you want to solve this by making them install a 1 million euros solution, even for SMEs, small companies, small and medium enterprises. Well, maybe the solution is not good. There is no fit between the solution you're proposing because it's too expensive and the problem you want to solve, okay? So then this also can be a deal breaker, even more important than the previous one, okay? And then there are many of them. Actually, in my opinion, this is getting a little bit too fashionable now, and everybody's making up new fits every day, okay? But I will finish with the product channel fit, which is, in my opinion, is also one of the most important ones, okay? Which is, all right, let's assume that you have a founder idea fit, you have problem solution fit, and you even have product market fit. We will talk about it later. But how about product channel fit? Product channel fit means once all those previous fits have been met, how do you acquire your customers? What channels do you use to acquire your customers? Do you just make advertisement in radio, TV, like in the last century? Do you use AdWords? Do you use any other affiliation? Do you hire a team of 20 salespeople to help you sell the product? Okay, so those channels, the fit between the channels you are either using and your product is also something we need to validate through this lean startup methodology, okay? And although we will talk about product market fit later, I've highlighted it here because of something super important. All the others are fits that they are nice to have. They can give you an intuition about or certain evidence about the potential of your company. But to make a research analogy, okay? Any of us can be writing different research papers, right? Maybe throughout your career, you will write 10, 20, whatever, how many of them you write. But maybe the paper that allows you, that entitles you to get your PhD degree, that is a milestone. It may or may not be the one you're more proud of, the one with more impact, with more citations, or the highest quality one, but it's a milestone in your career because it allows you to become a doctor, right? Or to become another title, or in your scale hierarchy. Okay, so product market fit is the same. When you reach product market fit, first of all, you decrease your odds of failing. Okay, I mean, it's like, okay, we are safer now. Okay, seriously, the whole team reduces the stress level. I can guarantee you that. Okay, but on the other hand, even from a more terminological perspective, you start not being, or you stop being a startup. Okay, then you are not experimenting anymore. Then you can scale. You pass from startup to scale up. Okay. All right. And then to finish this general part, one of them, this concept is of paramount importance. I don't know if you've heard MVP before, and normally, especially for people who like sports or something like this, MVP it's more associated with like most valuable player, something like that, right? Nothing to do with that. Okay. MVP in this context stands for minimum viable product. Okay, and there are, again, two ways. The traditional way for an established company is, okay, we see there is a problem. We need a mobility solution to take a person from point A to B, or a cargo from point A to B, and we need to develop a solution. We need to develop a product. Okay, maybe here, of course, this is a cartoon, but okay, maybe someone would start by building the engine, which is the most important part, or another one would say, no, let's start with the chassis, which is the cheapest one, or the one that people will actually see. All right, and then you start working on the different pieces, but after every step of the process, you still have nothing that the customer can benefit from. Okay, so this is the traditional way. What is the problem? The problem is that, again, you have to wait for normally months, if not years, until you have something to offer to the market. And by the time you hit the market, maybe it has already changed. Maybe your solution is obsolete. So how do we change that? By doing like you can see in the cartoon. You offer something that, okay, maybe you use a skateboard. It's not the most comfortable one. Maybe it's not useful if you want to take more than one person, or if it's raining, or you name it. But in certain contexts, it can take you from point A to point B. And then the customer will come up with those problems. Will tell you, hey, this is good, but I need to go to the office and it takes me too long, or I need to go with a second person. Okay. So then you iterate with your product and you create a better product, taking into account the customer's feedback, basically. Okay, instead of you building on hypothesis after hypothesis, you build one hypothesis, you test it as soon as possible, and then incorporate the feedback of the customer as soon as possible. This in Silicon Valley and these environments, these fancy environments, it's normally summarized as fail fast. Okay, it doesn't matter if you fail. The most important thing is that you do it in a fast way. Don't take 12 months to find out that your product doesn't really solve a problem and nobody wants to buy it. Okay, because we will see that at the end of the session. But I already mentioned it earlier. About 90% of the startups fail, and one of the most commonly accepted reasons for failure is lack of product market fit. What does it mean? Nobody wants to buy your product. You build something that in the end, people don't buy. As simple as that, okay? We will go in details later to see other reasons and everything, but if you manage to achieve product market fit, pretty much you have decreased your risk by, I don't know, a factor of 3 or 4, something like that. Also, super important, okay, about this concept. super important. Let me see how we go on time. Okay, more or less. Super important about this concept. And this is something that we have to balance, okay? An MVP, one thing is what theory says, and another one is what practice shows or how people use this concept. And the truth is that still today, people use this in two different ways. One more inspired in lean manufacturing, which is minimum viable product would be the minimum amount of functionality that you can show to a customer and still create value for them, okay? The customer can use, which is more or less what I just explained about this graph, this diagram. However, a more rigorous conceptualization of the lean startup is, the lean startup concept MVP is not how to create value for the customer, is how to obtain information from the customer. So really an MVP is the minimum product that we can show to a customer and learn from that interaction, okay? You will see about that later. Yeah, sorry, I have that later in the fifth section, okay? But basically, because an MVP, it can even not be a product, okay? I could just be talking to you about something that I haven't built yet. So I don't even have the product. I just have the idea. I'm telling you my vision of what I want to build. So if just with that talk, I can extract learning from it, then it could be an MVP, okay? It's a special kind of MVP for the lean startup approach.